Hello everyone, bringing you a video today looking at a pair of Canadian issue rubber overboots. Now these are part of the Canadian combat uniform. They're designed to be worn over the combat boot and obviously for wear in wet weather to provide additional protection to the feet, and obviously they are waterproof, they are rubberized. We're going to have a look at them in some detail, look at the construction and so forth. I don't know an exact date of introduction for these. They certainly are around in the 1970s, they turn up in photos from the 1970s. Whether they are part of the initial issue of combat uniform in the 1960s, I'm not entirely sure. If anyone has an answer to that, I'd much appreciate it. In the video we're going to look at a selection of these from the late 70s through to 1994, and certainly they were still on issue in the 1990s. There's also a possible British link, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. Hopefully you'll find it interesting having a look at these, and as I say, they're an interesting part of the Canadian combat uniform. Obviously Canada had a very good reason to invest time and money in developing cold and wet weather kit. So without further ado, we'll have a look at these in a little bit more detail. Right, so here they are. We have a matched pair here, the size 12.5 in this instance. You can see there, we have the manufacturer Acton underneath, and we have made in Canada. And then obviously that's in French, which is typical. You can see the details there underneath, and you can see details of the tread pattern on these as well, the sort of diamond shaped tread pattern underneath there if I shine the light on. Looking at the uppers, you can see here the various seam details along the side here, and we have obviously a zipper opening at the front, zip opening at the front, so you can see underneath you've got full rubber tongue there inside to keep these waterproof, but that gives you a nice big opening in which to put your foot, obviously with boot worn inside there. Plenty of wiggle room to get that in. These particular examples, you can see there is a marking here, a lot number, and then that's the date worked in there as well. We look inside the tongue here, the full marking with the designation, which is Overshoes Men's High Style, and then the date and the size again in the cloth lining there. These are rubber over cloth. You can actually see, unfortunately, when these have been stored in the past, they've been folded, and you can just see there's a crack appearing there, which shows how the rubber finish sits over the cloth, where it's actually beginning to crack and come away. Slightly unfortunate, but there we go. So they open down the front with the zip like that. And as I say, these particular examples here are a matched pair. Just look at the other side here, give you some idea of the details. These obviously are a 1990s dated pair. I have a couple of other examples which aren't a matched pair. They're two left, I think, two lefts, but they show some earlier dates, so I'll pull those into shot in just a minute. But the details and so forth of these, I'll leave one in shot and I'll bring one of the earlier examples into view. You can see here the construction and so forth is essentially exactly the same tread pattern underneath there, same manufacturer in fact, and then size 11 in this case, and you have the made in Canada and then the same in French underneath. And these again fastened with a zip down the front, although it's a slightly different design of zip. The zip on the later examples is marked clicks, as you can see there, or CLIX, whereas these use a lightning zip, as you can see there. So slight difference there, but otherwise identical in design. As I say, this example is a bit earlier, dates to 1980, and you can see a change. One of the earlier names for these, the nomenclature, Overshoes Rubber Man's High Black. You can see there. And then I also have another example which dates from the 1970s, very late 1970s, 1979 in fact, otherwise identical to the 1980 dated boot, but you can see there 1979 I think it is. Believe that's a 9, just very heavily stamped at the bottom. At size 11 again, and these, as you can see, are Overboots rubber zipper front. So slight change in the nomenclature again between 79 and 80, which made coming up with a title for the video a little bit difficult, but I think these were also known as galoshes to some as well. They were referred to as galoshes. They served the same purpose basically. And as I say, they're designed to be worn as an overboot. They go over your combat boot as a waterproof outer boot. Now these are of interest not only from obviously my collecting of Canadian kit, they're also a contender for overboots which were worn during the Falklands, and I'll put some photographs in here. You can see during the Falklands War, 5th Infantry Brigade, particularly supporting arms and seemingly the Gurkhas, quite often turn up in photographs wearing rubber overboots, and there's been some debate over the source of these. It's certainly true that the Bundeswehr, the West German army, used a similar design of overboot, and some have suggested that they may have come from Bundeswehr stocks and been purchased in. Another option, of course, is that they are in fact these Canadian overboots, and either one's possible. I've not seen a definitive answer yet. It's certainly true to say that these Canadian overboots are a distinct possibility. They were around at the time, as you can see. They certainly resemble those seen in photographs of the time. So there we are. That's just a quick run through these Canadian rubber overboots. A very good design, a very sensible design when you're working in cold, wet weather, to have a boot you can wear over your combat boot to give that extra waterproof layer. They aren't particularly heavy. They're heavy enough, but they're not particularly heavy, so I don't think they'd impair movement too much. And obviously they do have a relatively decent tread pattern, although this is quite fine. So I think on very fine sort of clay mud, you'd probably end up, this would fill up quite quickly and probably not provide you much grip. I'd be interested to hear from those who wore these how you got on with them, whether the tread was adequate for moving around and so forth. Certainly it's not as good as the tread on the later Canadian combat boots. If people did wear these on exercise, it would be interesting to know how you got on with them and if they did provide enough grip to move about effectively. But there we are. That's a quick look at these. Hopefully you found it interesting. So there we are. That was a look at a pair of Canadian rubber overboots. As I say, part of the Canadian combat uniform. No real analogue in British service, but as said, it does appear they may have been used in the Falklands campaign by supporting elements, and particularly the Gurkhas, obviously part of 5th Infantry Brigade. It's not entirely certain that these were issued at the time, but it's a distinct possibility, and they certainly match up quite well to those which are seen in photographs. So, as I say, I do hope you found it interesting looking at these, and I hope you've enjoyed the video as a whole. If you have, and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, little notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below, and as ever, a massive thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch, but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.